Hi there, this is Harry and welcome back to Advanced English Lessons with Harry, where I try to help you to get a better understanding of the English language. And in the Advanced English lesson today, we're going to look at expressions for job interviews. So I've split them into different sections and I'll go through them one by one. So this is an advanced English lesson and it's useful speaking phrases for job interviews. Okay, so let's get started. As I said, we're going to look at it in different sections. I've 5 different sections. How to agree with somebody, so expressions to use when you're agreeing with somebody. How to disagree with somebody, so expressions you'll use when disagreeing with somebody. Asking for clarification, or you want somebody to repeat something. If you want to buy yourself some time, and then also to give yourself time to think, and then finally saying something in another way. You'll get the hang of it. You'll have to practice them, of course, but they are very useful, as I said, particularly when you're going for a job interview. It can always be a nervous time, particularly if English is not your first language, and therefore if you've got some assistance, some expressions that you can use, it'll make you feel a little bit more confident, a little less nervous when you're sitting in front of the interviewer. Okay, now, so the first section is when you want to agree with somebody. So it's always nice to have good positive body language, okay? So to nod your head and make noise like that. I see. These are nice ways to agree. But if you want to use some expressions, so here they are. I can't help thinking the same. So when you want to agree with what somebody said, I can't help thinking the same. Yes, I think it would be a great idea to improve the marketing by doing this or something else. So I can't help thinking the same means, yeah, I agree with what you have said. Or just very simply, true enough. So when somebody says something, I believe that our target market are the people under the age of 30, and all of those people spend most of the time on the internet. True enough. Yeah. So you're agreeing with somebody saying the statement is true enough. Or just simply, that's right. That's what they do. They spend most of the time on the internet. So if we want to get at them, then we have to advertise, or we have to have a presence on the internet, or we have to be aware of how they spend the time. Yeah, that's right. Or if you really want to emphasize that you agree with what the person has said, I couldn't agree more. So it means, yeah, that's absolutely hit the nail on the head. I couldn't agree more. Or, yeah, that's just what I was thinking. Yeah, so you're in agreement. That's just what I was thinking. So what do you think about this idea? Do you think we should write, or do you think we should take a permanent position on the internet? Do you think we should invite people to do this? Yeah, that's a good idea. That's just what I was thinking. Okay, so 5 expressions. I can't help thinking the same. True enough. That's right. I couldn't agree more. And finally, that's just what I was thinking. So all simple ways, quite formal, rather than the, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's quite formal and shows and demonstrates that you're on the same page or the same wavelength, as we like to say, as the person interviewing you or the person that you're talking to. Okay. Now, if you want to disagree with somebody, now this is very dangerous territory, as we say. You could be on a little bit of thin ice in an interview if you disagree in a hard way. So you have to really make sure that it's a polite way to disagree and also a pleasant way to disagree. So you can use expressions like this. I'm not sure about that. So you might have your doubts, but I'm not sure about that. Perhaps I need time to think about it. I'm not sure about that. I see things rather differently myself, but I understand where you're coming from, so I see things rather differently. So we can both have different opinions. You can have a different opinion on religion, you can have a different opinion on geographical politics or geopolitics, as it's called, different views on finance, whatever it might be. So it doesn't mean you're right and the other person is wrong, or they're right and you're wrong, but you can just have different opinions. So I see things rather differently myself. Well, my upbringing or my background would mean that I would look at things a little bit differently than you do. I see things rather differently myself. So it's polite. And it's a nice polite way of showing that you disagree with somebody. Or I don't entirely agree with you. So it doesn't mean I think you're completely wrong. I don't entirely agree with you. There are parts of what you've said that are okay or that I could agree with, but I don't entirely means not completely, not 100%. Or just simply, well, actually, in my opinion, actually, I think, or actually what has happened recently. Yeah. So actually is a sort of a way of stopping somebody saying, well, I don't think that's correct. Actually, I think we should do it this way. Okay. So when we want to disagree with somebody, we need to do it politely. We need to do it in a way that's respects their views, and we're not going to put them down completely. And particularly in a job interview, you need to be really, really careful not to be seen to be belligerent in any way or difficult or stubborn. So use these expressions. I'm not sure about that. I see things rather differently myself. I don't entirely agree with you, and put the stress on entirely. I don't entirely agree with you. Or actually. Yeah, actually. So this indicates that you're about to disagree. Well, actually. Now, at an interview, it's really important to listen. Sometimes we don't always understand what the other person has asked us, and we might need to get some clarification, or we might ask somebody to repeat, as it can be a bit of a nervous time, and we might be focusing on how we present ourselves, and we don't listen as clearly as we should. So these are the ways in which you can ask somebody to repeat, or if you're looking for clarification. Simply, would you mind repeating that? Yeah, so I didn't really understand it fully. Would you mind repeating that? Or simply, pardon? Yeah, what was that? Pardon? Particularly if you're doing the interview by over the internet, or you're doing it, by Zoom or in some other platform, you might not hear clearly, or there may be some interruption on the line. So you could say, would you mind repeating that, please? Or pardon? I'm afraid I didn't catch that, or I didn't quite catch that. Means I didn't understand it. And so with those three expressions, it does buy you a little bit of time, because it gives you time to think. Okay, so would you mind repeating that? Pardon, I'm afraid I didn't quite catch it, or I'm afraid I didn't catch that. And then finally, if you want to just clarify something that somebody has said, so perhaps they're going to outline the job position to you, or some terms about the job. So if you want to make sure that you understood it, then you can say, well, okay, let me get this right. This is what you said. Let me get this right. If I could clarify it, and perhaps you could tell me if I'm right or wrong. So you repeat what the person has said. So this job will be a manager's position. I will have responsibility for this office and a few regional offices. I have 10 people reporting to me. My mainline manager is going to be whoever. Yeah. So let me get this right. So you repeat it, not verbatim, word for word, but you summarize, and then the other person, the interviewer, will say, yeah, that's it. Yeah, you got it. That's a clear understanding. So if you want to be clear, you want to clarify it, then that statement is a really good way to do it. So let me get this right, or let me just repeat that so that you can tell me, am I right or am I wrong? Okay. So asking for clarification or repetition, expressions like, would you mind repeating that, please? Pardon? I'm afraid I didn't quite catch that. Let me get this right. Okay. Now, if you want to say something in another way, so perhaps somebody has made a statement, the interviewer, and you want to repeat it, but you want to use different words. And again, it's a way of getting clarification. So you could use these expressions. What I'm trying to say is this. Or what I'd like to say is this. What I mean is. In other words, what you want me to do is this. How can I best say this? Perhaps I should make that clearer by saying. Okay, so there's expressions where you might want to say something in another way. So let me give them to you again. What I'm trying to say is, I really like the job, I really like the description, but I need to have some clarification in relation to my responsibilities. Okay? What I mean is, could you just tell me exactly how many people will be reporting to me, who my reporting line will be? etc. Okay? In other words, I'll be responsible for all of those offices outside the main office, or all of the branches outside of the main office. Okay? How can I best say this? So you want to use this expression when you want to be really, really clear. You don't want anybody to be under any misunderstanding, but you also want to be polite. How can I best say this? What I would actually like is a little bit of time to consider your offer, a little bit of time to compare it to what my objectives are, and then come back to you in a couple of days. So how can I best say this? So you set out exactly what you want to say. You're not rejecting the offer, but you're not accepting it immediately. You want time to consider. Or the final example, how, or perhaps I should make this clearer by saying. So if somebody's a little bit of doubt about what you're saying, or you can see some expression on their face that they look a little bit confused, then you might say something like, perhaps I should make that clearer by saying. Yeah, and then you just say it in very simple terms. Perhaps I should make that clearer by saying what I'm actually looking for is a job with a bit more responsibility, opportunities for a good career path, but also the opportunity to take on some extra learning, some courses, or indeed an MBA or master's or something like that. So I should make that clearer by saying. So you're set out exactly what your objectives are, why you're considering leaving your current position, why you want to join this new company. So you're really making it very, very clear from the very beginning why. Okay, so saying something in another way. What I'm trying to say is, what I mean is. In other words, how can I best say this? Perhaps I should make that clearer by saying. Okay. All right, then the final section is giving yourself time to think. And this is really, really critical in an interview situation, because sometimes you're prepared, but sometimes you're not as prepared as you might be, or indeed they might throw you a curveball, as I say, by asking you a question completely out of the blue, because there's a standard set of questions that interviewers usually ask, but occasionally, particularly in the IT sector, they might ask something a little bit left field, something that will catch you off guard. So you want a few minutes or seconds to gather your thoughts. So it's a nice way to be able to buy yourself some time. So give yourself some time to think. So these expressions are handy. May I think about that for a moment before I answer? Or before I answer, just let me gather my thoughts. So you're actually asking for a few minutes to consider it. Let me see. Okay, let me see. So you think about it, and then you gather your thoughts quickly, and then you reply. Or, how can I put this? And you give yourself a few seconds to think, and then you get into your response. Or something like, I guess, or I believe, it is my understanding, the way I see it. So lots of different ways in which you can give yourself time to think. And those few seconds, they're only a few seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, are really, really important. They may not sound like a lot of time, but it should be enough time for you to gather your thoughts if you're well prepared. Okay, so giving yourself time to think, use these expressions. May I think about that for a moment? Or would you mind if I just thought about that for a few seconds? Let me see. So that's usually, we use that in response to a question. Let me see. How will I put it? How can I put this? I guess, I think, I believe, it is my understanding, the way I see it. So lots of other ways in which you can just buy those vital few seconds to give yourself time to breathe and time to think. Because in interviews, it can be a little bit of a panic situation, particularly if a question comes to you that you hadn't expected. Somebody asks you, how many basketballs would you fit into a British telephone box? Well, that's not something you can prepare for unless you've been standing outside a telephone box. So it's something to just catch you off guard to see how you react. But you need time to think about that. Or how many Smartie sweets can you get into a tube of Smarties? Again, it's something that you could never prepare for, but they want to see how you react to questions like that. So you need to buy yourself some time. So if they ask you how many basketballs can you fit into the average telephone box, you might say, well, I guess you'd have to consider the size of the basketballs. I guess you'd have to work out the average size of the telephone box, the space between the basketballs. So you're buying yourself a little bit of time, and then you can give your answer in a more cohesive or structured way. Okay, so they're the different expressions that will be helpful, advanced English expressions used at job interviews. And they're really, really important and helpful in your preparation. And as always, you know the drill by now. If you need some extra help, some extra suggestions, then just drop me a line, www.englishlessonbyskype.com. Very happy to help you. Okay, this is Harry thanking you for listening, thanking you for watching. As always, join me for the next lesson.